friend. Welcome to Wild and Waking, a sacred space for the woman unraveling what no longer fits, remembering the truth that's always lived inside her, reclaiming her joy, her voice, her power, and rising fully, fiercely, and without apology. I'm your host, Emily Rushell, and together we'll explore what it means to live in alignment, lead with soul, and awaken a life of abundance, authenticity, and purpose. Let's begin. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Wild and Waking. I am just really excited for this conversation. I think I probably say that every week, but this has felt like the most, oh my gosh, the stars aligned at just the right time for just exactly what keeps coming up over and over again in the right person, in the right context. I can't wait. So just to set the stage, one conversation that has come up for as long as I have been doing coaching related work is this tension of growth with the people we're in relationship with, especially in marriage. Like even when the women I've been coaching and myself have gone through like personal growth or health journeys, there's kind of this fear, tension that comes with, oh my gosh, I'm growing and my partner isn't. What does that look like? What does that mean? And then as of recently, this conversation has just deepened 100 times over as women in this community are doing really deep identity work and, untangling and unraveling their relationship and understanding and worldview related to religion, politics, spirituality, like I said, identity and beyond. And so I put out a call on Threads, like, is there anyone that is specifically talking and teaching about this? I certainly can throw my 2 cents in the hat, but this just keeps coming up enough that I know that there's someone who can speak into it really well. And insert Maggie, I think that someone originally tagged you on that thread. You replied back with a whole workshop landing page that basically hit on every single point that had come up on this call that I was on Tuesday. And I was like, this sounds great. Are you free tomorrow? And here we are. Maggie, welcome to Wild and Waking.
Okay, this is the magic of the internet. And when you open yourself up to magic, and then it just feels very kindred spirits.
Yes.
So I was telling Emily right before we started recording that when I created this workshop for the world to hopefully consume, it's a free workshop, anybody could watch it. I was like, I think this is a problem. Not a lot of people are talking about it. I'm going to trust myself that I should put this out there in the world. So when I read your request for this information, I took it like a little wink from God or the universe, whatever we want to call it. Like, oh yes, Maggie, keep going. This is going to help someone. So it's very aligned on both sides, which just feels really good. So we're going to have fun.
I love it. Okay, Maggie, for someone getting to know you for the first time, give us a little context of who you are, where you are, and ultimately what brought you into the work you're doing today.
So I am a feminist marriage coach, which is an interesting way to think about being a marriage coach specifically, because I'm all about empowering women. And the way I think about marriage is very philosophically. I think about a social construct where women were once property, like you'll get 2 cows and a farm and a wife kind of thing. And I think about where we were once property and now how can we own that relationship? How can we own that experience? How can we make it work for us? And that's really the ultimate philosophy my whole work is predicated upon. And so what I do is my specialty is very also unique. I do individual marriage coaching, so I don't actually work with couples. I work with women whose partners, for whatever reason, aren't interested in therapy or tried it and didn't resonate with it, or for whatever reason. Sometimes there are lots of interesting reasons, but they are frustrated. They want a better relationship and they're done waiting. So those are the people that come to me. And we use something for the science nerds that are listening. We use something from systems theory, which is a recognized theory in psychology, which is when one element in a system changes, the other elements respond to that change. So if I show up, here's an example. I'm just going to give everybody a little mini visualization of what this means, systems theory. I call it the power of one because I like naming things and it's easier to remember. So the power of one is this. Imagine Emily and I are in one of those big cubicle offices that has 20 people all sitting in big gray cubicles, right? And we walk in one day and we just found out it was the last season of Bridgerton and we're crying and we feel terrible. And we bring a little black cloud with us when we walk in and everybody kind of grunts and looks up and there we go. Now imagine that we find out, I don't know, Taylor Swift has a new album coming out or
I
something.
knew you were going to say Taylor Swift has a new album. This is why we're friends immediately.
We walk in and we're like, everybody's getting tickets and we brought donuts, right? We just walked in. We just brought our joy, our happiness, our generosity, our excitement, and we shifted the whole room. Anyone who's ever worked in an office has had that experience with the doom and gloom person and the I bring donuts person. This is what the power of one is in your relationship, at work, wherever you are. This is how we use one person's growth to impact the overall relationship, sometimes without the other person participating. Okay, that's my explanation to start with.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're just going to dive straight in because I think you brought up a really powerful point that I know so many women in this community identify with of I'm doing the work, my partner isn't, he won't go to therapy, he won't read the book, he won't listen to the podcast. I'm growing, he's not. I'm frustrated, he's scared. Like, where do we go from here? I love him. I know he loves me, but like, we are not the same people we were when we got married.
Yeah. Okay, here's the first place I like to start because there's often almost everybody who's ever asked me any version of that question has resentment underneath. Like, you asked me in the most loving, kind way possible. But usually it's like, I'm doing all the work. What the heck? That kind of vibe. So the first thing that I want everyone listening to know is the reason that you're going to listen to this whole episode and the reason you're going to keep doing what you're doing is because you want to do something different. So let's just level set for a second. Your partner won the lottery the day you said yes to them. Their life was set. They are happy. They want to rock no boats. They want to change no things because they have the ultimate thing, which is you. Now, you may be frustrated, want to grow, want more, want something different. So the first thing you have to acknowledge is I'm the one who wants something different, which is why I'm doing something different. That's just an acknowledgement of like, I think it's Byron Katie that says when you argue with reality, you lose like 100% of the time. It's kind of like we just have to be like, what's real right now is I'm the one who wants something different. My partner doesn't. The second thing that I like to point out to people, and I think is really useful to think about, and with that setup that I explained about how systems theory works and how the power of one works, is I believe truly in my heart when I say this, that it's not that you end up doing all the work in this regard, it's that you go first. And if you adopt the mentality of I go first, then something shifts inside your brain. It allows you to relax. It allows you to share about some of your growth, which we'll talk about later, how to share and how to approach sharing some of that growth. But I go first is the idea of how you approach it. And I'd love to give you an example if that feels good. Okay. I like to sort of give the concept, but then make it grounded because I'm like, yeah, I go first. What the heck does that mean? Like, I don't even know.
Sure.
So most relationship people, so I'm going to tell you a concept that's not unique to me. I teach it, but anybody who knows what they're doing in relationship work would also teach this, which is the idea of do-overs. So what is a do-over? It's like, let's say I walked in the door and I'm feeling grouchy and I didn't greet you in a loving, kind way. And I'm like, hey, that isn't who I want to be. Hold on, let me try again. And then I just do it again. I'm like, hey, Emily, I'm so happy to see you. This is so exciting. And I just ask for a do-over when I'm not performing to where I want to be. And we create a culture of do-overs in our family and our relationships. So if we see somebody who's also a little off, we say, hey, do you want to try that again? Like with love. Like, are you sure that's how you want to greet me? Sometimes I do that with my husband. He'll ask me out on a date. And, we've been together, I don't know, 18 years at this point, whatever. And he's like, hey, let's go to the movies. And I'm like, you could woo me. Like, where's the wooing? I'm probably available. And he'll be like, my dearest darling, on this evening, would you like to join me for an excursion? Whatever. And we make it fun and we add laughter and we laugh and we do it over. Okay. So that's the concept of a do-over. I taught this to one of my clients. She wrote to me legit like 2 years later. We had finished working together, like life went on. And she wrote to me, she said, I need to share this with you because it's so amazing. She's like, I have 2 teenagers. And ever since we worked together, I've been doing that do-over thing with their dad. So they see us doing the do-overs. So then they come home now and something happens and they're like, Mom, can we do that thing again? Can we do the rewind it? And that's what I mean by you go first. You learn this idea, you start doing it, you start implementing it. And the teenagers were never even part of the equation when we were working through this with her and her husband. And now the whole family gave it a new name. It's their own thing now. We do a rewind here. That's what I mean of you go first and how powerful it can be when you decide you don't care what everybody else is doing. You're just going to go first. And then you're going to see how that impacts the people you love.
Mm. Okay, so we adopt this mindset of I'm going first. I'm the one who desires change in whatever that looks like, exploring personal growth, goals, finances, spirituality, whatever. I go first. I am leading in this way. And then you mentioned, how do we have these conversations, especially when there may be resistance or misunderstanding coming from the people in our lives?
So I think, and you tell me, Emily, what are the conversations? Like, are the conversations about money, about doing something different? Are they, I want you to join me at a retreat? Like, the nature of what the conversation is will also impact how we approach it. I'll give you maybe a couple of examples, but if you think of like something you've seen your community be frustrated by, I'd love to really troubleshoot it for them, kind of thing. But here's what happens with me. I'll give you a personal example. I have not met a workshop I didn't want to do. I'm all about it, right? If Oprah had a 20-hour thing, I would do the 20 hours. I'd be there. And so I come home excited. Oh my God, the whole world is amazing. And I just learned these things. And then my husband is a computer engineer. So just level set, life coach, engineer, draw your own stereotypical conclusions. They will be accurate of how that goes. So I'll want to share everything I learned, like a puppy. I'll be like puppy energy, right? And he's like concentrating on something, and maybe puppy energy isn't the energy for that day. So the first thing, no matter what the conversation is about, is just asking for consent. Is this a good time? I have something I want to share. Or we need to talk, right? We need to talk. Never use those words. Everybody freaks out when you say we need to talk. The more you can add context, hey, I want to share what I learned at my workshop. Hey, there's something I'd love to try with the kids. Hey, I think we should do a special kind of date. I heard this life coach on this podcast, and she said that we should have sexy times and whatever. The more you add context of what it is, and then when is a good time, I want to explain it all to you. Consent, number one, and always. And then depending on what it is, you want to set your own expectation of what you want from the conversation. Are you just sharing? Do you want agreement? Are you trying to convince them of something? Convincing is a no in my universe. We can talk about that, whatever, but it's like, what is your goal is going to impact then how you approach it, what you share, and what you do.
Okay, so I have many examples we could riff off on. Okay, so example one, we're just going to generalize here because the women I work with, primarily women, she is on a therapy journey. Maybe she wants to start therapy. Maybe she's already in therapy. She is doing the work, right? She's introspective. She's redefining. She's setting boundaries. She's unpacking. She's understanding. And now she's looking at their life, their marriage, their relationship. And she's like, really kind of changing and evolving from the inside out and looking at him like, why the fuck aren't you doing this too? Why don't you care? Like,
okay, pause right there. Why don't you care is an assumption a lot of us make, but we need to be really granular right now. So I do cognitive work where I question people's thoughts. That's the type of coaching that I do. So when you tell me everything you tell me, I'm like, let's check. So we often have the idea that our partners have to care the exact same way that we care, and that they will furthermore also demonstrate their caring in the exact same way that we demonstrate our caring. And that is a fallacy. That is not correct. That is like a glitch in the computer. So if we were to walk around believing they didn't do 3 hours of therapy, therefore they don't care, that is a thought we just want to gently and lovingly question. Now, why aren't they doing the same thing I'm doing can go back to, well, do they want the same results I want? Do they want the same thing I want? We're often starting from very different paths, very different life experiences, a different set of traumas and virtues and flaws. So we very rarely marry someone who's our twin, and then we expect them to act as if they were our twin, and then we're disappointed when they don't. So that part is the part we can process like this with Emily and me and the type of work that we're doing right now. So that's the first place I would stop is why aren't they doing the work? If there was no judgment, why aren't they doing the work? What might one of your community members say? Like, what comes to mind that might be an answer?
Like, they don't care. They think it's dumb. They don't see the value in it. They are scared. I think when one person's on a journey of really deep introspection and the other is resistance to it, sometimes an underlying fearing is fear, especially in men who have been traditionally conditioned to not experience emotion. The idea of sitting and talking to a therapist and getting down to the nitty-gritty of their inner world is unfamiliar, taboo, and terrifying.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things. I want to talk about dumb, don't see the value, and scared because each of them are slightly different. The first thing is years ago, I read a book. It's called The Way Men Heal. It's a little short little book. You can read it in like one afternoon. The psychologist who wrote it is a man who has this hypothesis that I'm going to really distill it down to its basics of what I understood. So if you read the book and this isn't what he said, it's on me. This is what I understood.
This is your takeaway. That's fair.
Here's my takeaway. Is that women largely, right? So there's nuance. There's a universe of humans out there, but in large strokes, women process verbally and through connection. So Emily and I just met, but Emily and I could like go away for the weekend and talk 12 hours straight and have the best time just without even the shadow of a possibility of a doubt, right? Like that's how we connect. Men connect through action. They don't not connect. They just do a different flavor of connecting. And I read this book and then I thought, I don't know about this action thing. Let me test it on my husband. So my poor sweet husband is my little lab rat. I test all these things on. So he comes home one night. He's an IT engineer. So he has a whole team, does IT stuff. He comes home one night and I say, so how did you feel today? I kid you not. He's like, I felt great. And that was the end of the conversation.
Yes.
And he wasn't like mad or not wanting to participate. He literally had nothing else to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I had just read the book. So I said, and what did you do today? And then he said, oh, my team had to troubleshoot this problem and this other thing happened. And then we were frustrated, but then we figured it out and we were all so happy. And then we all went to lunch and we started laughing and we had such a good time and we had so much fun. And when he's talked about what they did, he revealed like 5 different feelings in one shot. And I was like, I think the book is on to something here. I think there's something to this. So some men are going to say no to therapy because they don't want to sit and talk.
Yeah.
But if you told them, let's go on a wilderness adventure or let's go on a, I don't know, kayaking, live to your edge, whatever thing, they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Right? We want to just remember that they do it in a different flavor, like ice cream. It doesn't mean they're completely incapable of doing it. Now, some people are completely incapable of doing it. But I like to tell people, look, some of you are genuinely married to jerks, but most of you are married to good guys having bad days.
Mm-hmm.
Just think about that. Okay, before I go on to dumb, value, and scared, any thoughts or anything about what I just explained?
No, the only thing that popped into my mind is a reel that I saw on Instagram fairly recently. And I want to say a therapist had created it. And it was like how she gets men to talk or something like that. And it was meant to be kind of satirical and funny, but it was like them sitting in the chair next to her and her asking some probing questions. And they're just like not like one word answers, not responding. And then she like throws a football in their hand and suddenly they're like throwing the ball around and they're like, oh, my dad. And that's why I'll never be loved. And, it was kind of meant to highlight that. But that's the first thing I thought of like, oh, okay, actually, in addition to all of these layers of programming and conditioning, which is almost a whole other podcast episode, like the way that they are processing and expressing that is naturally going to be different. And if we are coming in as women with the expectation that they're going to experience what we're going through in the same way that we are, like we're both kind of setting ourselves up for failure there. That totally makes sense.
Correct. And there's one more thing that I want to add, and I really think I want to hear your thoughts about this. I want your opinion on what I'm about to say. I have come to the conclusion, and I call it the Penn, what do I call it? The Penn hypothesis. It's my hypothesis. But I just won't like a conclusion. I'm pretty sure it's what it is. I can show you this pen. I have this really pretty pen. It's kind of a light blue. It's like really nice. And it erases. It's very cool. I could have a 30-minute exposition on this pen and how it glides across the paper and how I feel when I use it and how I remember high school. I could really go crazy on this pen. My husband can see this pen and his mind will have one word in it and it will be pen. And so often I will want to know, what are your thoughts? What do you think about this? This drama just happened with my cousin and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, that's wrong. And I'll be like, no, tell me more. He's like, I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, period. That's it. He literally has no other thoughts after that. It's a blank slate, right? And when I was younger and didn't know as much as I know now, I would get really frustrated by that. And I'd be like, oh, he's withholding. He's not telling me. I want to know more. And when I realized there's just nothing left after pen, it's just a period, I was able to adjust my expectations. And now he and I joke about it like all the time. And sometimes he'll turn to me and say, no, it's just pen. It's like our code of like, no, there's nothing else. I'm not telling you. There's just literally nothing else. What are your thoughts about this, Emily?
I see that playing out in so many different ways, but I will say I don't think my husband is quite the same way. He listens to every podcast episode. So Andrew, please come back and tell me what you think. But he is an Enneagram 5 and he likes to take apart and understand everything. And like he wants to talk through all of these different scenarios and his feelings around them about the things that he like specifically cares about in the moment. So I'm kind of laughing of like, okay, I don't know that applies to like this specific person in my life, but I can see that pan out in so many other people that I know and being like, well, of course, if you're expecting a different kind of depth, and I think this also kind of goes back to, like you said, managing expectations and also breaking down the expectation that the person that we marry is meant to fulfill every need that we have as humans, right? But like we come into this foul, like you complete me, you're my better half, you're my everything. And it's like, no, that's the person I choose to do life with and that I have a family with and that, I enjoy. But I am also need to be full within myself. And I have other relationships in my life, female friendships, work that is meaningful and fills my cup and fills the well for other types of conversations I want to have in other ways so that I'm not self-relying on, or I'm not relying on this one person to be the everything that I need and then some, and then being angry at them that they're not or can't.
Nailed it times 1,000. So the way we practice individualism, I'm from the United States, I'm in the United States. The way we practice hyper individualism in my personal culture that I grew up in is a fallacy. The idea that it takes a village is a fact. That is what it takes. We are an intertwined web of humans that need each other to survive. And some people might be listening to this and say, oh, lady, whatever, what are you smoking? And I will tell that person, I will challenge that person who's having that thought and say, go open your refrigerator and you tell me if the grapes aren't from Chile and the tomatoes aren't from Mexico and the eggs aren't from Kentucky, but I'm in Florida. Like, we cannot survive without each other, and we can see it in all these different ways. But the refrigerator is just a really great way to like, let's level set. You would be eating grass right now without other people.
And our grass is dying. So sticks and field corn where I live.
Yeah. And I love what you said about relying on just one person. Like that is also sets us up for so much despair and so
Mm-hmm.
much frustration. And then imagine the pressure your partner feels when they can't do all those things for you, but they desperately want to please you. Then you're frustrated and they're frustrated. And this is how we create this feeling that doesn't feel good, that gets in the way of connection. The image I want everybody to have, because I like talking about The Rock, Dwayne The Rock
Yes.
Johnson. Okay. Imagine, I think he's just so much fun. I've seen so many of his movies, but imagine that he played every character in the movie. So we're watching a movie and imagine that he played the love interest, the guy, but also the girl. He played the wacky best friend, but also the serious Shakespearean actor that's supposed to be the serious person in the whole thing. He was also the villain, but he was also the hero. Like, first of all, I mean, we could make an amazing movie because it's The Rock, but
I mean, that would be pretty funny, but I see the point.
most of the time, right? We try to put this one person in our life in every role in the movie, and we cast them in things that they're terrible. They're not the wacky sidekick. Maybe they're the thoughtful person who likes to take apart things and analyze things. We try to put them in all these roles. And so very, very often in my coaching is like, make a friend, join a community. Things like Emily's community, like join a community. And then in that community, make a friend is very often needed for the happiness of your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
side note. Okay. We're going to talk about they think it's dumb, they don't see the value, or they're scared. And the reason I want to take these apart is I would give very different coaching and very different guidance on each of these. And I want everybody to hear this. If they're scared, that's okay. Yellow flag. It's fine. It's normal to be scared by things we don't understand. It's normal to be scared by things that might rock the boat. Being scared is not an actual problem. It's just a part of the process of growth. It's fine. We can go back to it, but that's what I want you to know about being scared.
Okay,
Okay.
I definitely want to come back to this because I think this one is especially important in the untangling in worldviews, especially related to religion and spirituality. So I
Okay,
definitely want to
great.
come
Oh,
back to the
great.
fear.
Okay, we'll do that right next.
Perfect.
Okay. They don't see the value. Again, yellow flag. So green, okay, that's yellow. They don't see the value, could be educational point of view. It could be like, well, how can I show them the value? Am I trying to convince them, or am I trying to live my life in such a way that they cannot deny the value of what they see, right? That one, it's like there's still a spot where we can stretch, we can adjust our approach. They can see the value or not. And I think it's like a yellow flag. Like there's a place where we could create more connection, and there's a place where they may never see the value and we may have to part ways. Like that one's like yellow. They think it's dumb, red flag. Red, stop, adjust, take a minute, take a beat. And here's why. I literally was coaching on this the other day. When there's a foundation of love and respect
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship, even if you've gone through really hard things, even if you've been through a rough season and you're going through like one of those dark nights, if there's an ember, we can build that ember into a fire. I'm 100% confident. But if the person doesn't fundamentally accept you as a human, to me, call it. Call it now. I can coach you. We can talk. We can disentangle. You can do your side of the story. We can make it more peaceful, all those things. But if they fundamentally don't accept you as a human, and when there's dumb, that is a version, a flavor of contempt. And there's an amazing institute out in Seattle called the Gottman Institute. They research thousands of couples, decades of research that says contempt is one of the relationship killers that absolutely is poisonous to a relationship. So if you come home excited, like I come with my puppy energy, and you get insulted or verbally assaulted or anything like that, or this dumb, that's red, 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 red flag. If they're like, oh, I don't understand. Why does that mean so much to you? But there's curiosity. They don't see the value, but there's like, this obviously means something to you. Tell me more about what it's about. That's a very different vibe. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that was what I wanted to make sure to tell everybody.
No, I think that's so important. And I think this translates to whatever in whatever way you're growing or whatever you're curious about. It's like the difference between like, it's not important to them, but they're supportive and they're like, that's great for you. Tell me more, or go find someone who cares more. Like, but I love you. That's great. And, there's a difference between that and being dismissive, mean, condescending, which comes from a lot more different places and I think is a lot more indicative of much bigger things under the surface. And typically, this kind of, growth and these conversations might be bringing out things that have been under the surface for a long time, especially for women who have traditionally maintained the status quo, played certain roles, like absorbed certain identities, fell into patterns and then is having these like growth periods and awakenings of like kind of coming home to herself and being like, "Well, I didn't even choose this. I don't even like this. Like now I'm on this trajectory." And the way that that is met can have very different outcomes, I think.
Agree, 100%. So let's go to the scared. Tell me, you had made some notes of like when it comes to religion and their spiritual journey.
Yes, but I actually do want to talk about this, dumb thing a little bit more of like, okay, so if someone, because I don't want to breeze past this because I know there are people who are going to identify with this. So if someone's at a point in their journey, in whatever it is that they're navigating, whatever they're exploring, and they're bringing it into their relationship, and they are, like, where do we go from there? Like, how do we, I'm going to put this in quotes and I know you're going to take it apart, but like get them to understand or get them on our side or make them get it. Or, you said red flag, red flag, red flag. Like, at what point do you recognize like, oh, there's like a total level of disrespect that like isn't salvageable unless I go back to sacrificing every part of myself to maintain the status quo?
Okay, so there's two parts to this, the way that I want to frame it. The first thing is one of the questions I like to ask as a frame for coaching or the personal development or whatever you're doing in your relationship is, what is the best relationship I can have with this person? And then do I want that? So when you say, can I convince them? Can I show them? Can I make them get it? Let me see. Let me try. I'm going to invite them to the workshop with me. I'm going to have them, hey, we're going to have a night where we're going to do the 5 questions that I learned from this book. And they're either going to show up for it or they're going to reschedule it 7 times or they're going to do it. They may be sloppy in how they do it, but they're showing up. And you're like, you know what? The best relationship I can have with them, they're never fully going to get it, but they're kind of come along with me and I can work with that, right? So that's kind of a lens that you can use as a little bit of a filter is, what is the best relationship I can have? What are all the things I can do to get us to that place where I'm like, I think this is the best. And then do I want that? Because what happens often is, oh, they really did show up. They came to me on 5 retreats, but guess what? I don't want that. That's not it, right? So that also is a very valid outcome of this exploration. And the other thing is kind of like, when do you call it? How do you know that you've done enough? Should I adjust my thoughts? Whenever you learn that you can have a different perspective, then you start adjusting your perspective all the time. And I'm like, wait, if you're constantly every day over and over again having to like make lemonade out of lemons, then we need to check. Are you making lemonade once a month, once a week, 12 times a day? Once a month making lemonade is fine. I like lemonade. It's good. Once a week, we can even still work with. But if you're making it like every hour on the hour, this is when we're like, hey, maybe that's a little bit too much lemonade. And the filter that you can use is, am I going against my values or my well-being? Like, is maintaining, quote unquote, the status quo, how we're relating, whatever we're doing, the thing that other person wants, is it somehow violating my values, going against what I just learned, what I just embraced, what I just unleashed? I just went through perimenopause and I feel like very unhinged about everything, right? And I'm like, are you willing to come along with me in my unhinged journey, right? So those are the filters that I would use. I would check, how often am I making the lemonade? And I would check on, am I going against either my values or my well-being, or something that's like inherently, I'm hurting myself in some way in order to maintain the quote unquote status quo. That's how you start knowing maybe it's time to call it. So sometimes you're adjusting your expectations, but sometimes you're saying, this is never going to work in this context. And for those cases, what I want to say is, in our culture, in our society, we have decided, for reasons I don't understand, that a relationship is only good if it's long.
Mm-hmm.
So we prioritize length and minimize the importance of quality. And I want to be the voice in your head that says, quality matters more than length. A relationship can be amazing and it could be wonderful. And maybe you had 25 years with someone and raised amazing kids and, had a great adventures and it was great. And now it's time to call it. And there's no shame in that. It's still amazing. The things you did were still beautiful and powerful and awesome. And it's okay for relationships to end. So that's my answer.
But that's a really big conversation.
Yeah.
Well, because I think at some point you get to the question of like, am I choosing the version of what this relationship has to offer? Or am I choosing my liberation, my growth, my expression, my authenticity? And it doesn't feel as easy as this or that, right? There's so much messiness and nuance, especially when you have kids and, an intertangled life that you've created over decades.
Mm-hmm. I think that the thought error, the illusion, the whatever you want to call it, is that it would be easy because it's also not easy to sacrifice all those things.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's not easy to choose all those things and it's not easy to sacrifice all those things. So we don't get easy is not on the options that we get to pick. We get to pick what we prioritize. And there's a great book that I love. As you can tell, I'm a book nerd. I love quoting.
Me too. And so is everyone listening. So they're jotting it down.
Okay, great. There's a book called Essentialism. Have you ever read that one?
No, but I have heard of it.
Okay.
I have heard of it.
So my favorite takeaway from that book is that there will always be trade-offs and that we get to pick which are the trade-offs we want to make, right? So the trade-off could be, I want to have really deep conversations about all this stuff. And I'm going to be, stalking Emily and all her stuff because I want to talk more about this is my jam, right? And then the trade-off is how do I build that into my life? What am I giving up? What am I not doing, right? The opportunity cost, which is what is the price I pay for the thing that I choose? Is there's the thing that I'm not doing instead. And so I feel like there's this PR machine of the American dream, because I'm American, so of we get to have it all. And I just think that sets us up for so much sadness and so much despair and so much frustration and so much anger, because the truth is we always get to choose, but we wouldn't even want it all if we could have it all. I think about going to the Cheesecake Factory. Have anybody seen the menu in the Cheesecake Factory? It's 300 pages long.
Seriously.
And it's we think, oh my God, if only I could have all 300 items, in these 300 pages. No, you would feel terrible. You couldn't walk through the door. You would probably collapse. I don't know what would happen. And this is how we look at our lives. We're there's this menu. There's all these things. I want all of them. It's actually, what could you have in one meal? You can have a little bit of this. You can have a little bit of that. You can do a tasting menu. You can make really creative. You could have some leftovers, but you can have the whole menu. And when we're able to adjust that a little bit in the way we look at our life and even the way we look at our partner, hey, if I'm making a trade-off, you know what? Sometimes it's kind of boring when we do this and that and the other thing. But you know what? I've never felt safer. I've never felt happier. I've never felt more seen and accepted and loved. So, okay, that's my trade-off is, okay, sometimes a little bit, and we can talk about boring too. I've talked about boring, but that idea that there will be a trade-off and that it's okay that it's not easy is an important part of how we think about the whole thing, because it's not easy to, like I said, give up those values, those things that you've discovered, those things that your authenticity, like you said so eloquently, but it's also not easy to embrace them.
Mm. Okay, now let's touch on that idea of fear.
Yeah.
Specifically around a couple of different ideas. One thing that came up, kind of at the beginning of my personal growth journey was this fear of, oh my gosh, is she going to outgrow me? I don't understand where this is coming from. I don't understand what she's doing. She is becoming a different person. Is she gonna, what does this mean for us that she is changing? So that's one layer of the fear. And then I think another thing that I have just seen more frequently recently is in, some of these bigger, deeper, harder conversations is the fear, the internalized fear and expectations of the things that she is thinking about is bad or wrong or different than what I know. and kind of doubling down on like the no, this is what we believe and this is what we do and this is what is right and this is what is good and everything that is outside of that is bad. And if you are thinking about those things, then that is wrong and I am afraid and you are bad. And like, what does this mean? Which I think all boils down to kind of the same points of that fear of the unknown. And what does that mean for not only our relationship, but our life and other people's perception of our life? Or, just even the ripple effect of what does this mean for our community and our relationships and our families and all of that. So I see a lot of threads, whether or not he can articulate it, of ultimately fear, which can turn then into dismissal, misunderstanding, disconnect, all of the above.
So let's think of fear like ice cream, and it has all these different flavors. And depending on the flavor, again, it's one of those situations where there's nuance for each flavor. It's slightly different. When you say what she believes is wrong, can you give me an example just to be really concrete about how I explain it?
Sure. Okay. So an example that came up this week is a woman, who their family unit has always gone to the same church. And I don't remember exactly what it was, and it doesn't matter because I actually saw this play out several different ways. Like, this is our church, this is our belief system, this is what we are. And she's kind of asking some different set of questions, or she's starting to be like, I don't want to go and I can't explain why. I don't think this resonates me anymore. But like, she doesn't even have necessarily the language within herself to explain that. And she's kind of, just seeing things, reading between the lines, being like, this viscerally is not comfortable in my body anymore. And I think that there could be alternatives or more to this or not this. And he's like, no, this is what we do. And anything outside of that is bad.
Okay, so that's why the flavor really matters of the type of fear that they're having. We'll go back to outgrowing me. That's a different flavor of the fear ice cream that we're having. So, a couple of things. Years ago, some experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion created with like years of study and analysis the characteristics of white supremacy culture. And there's a document on Google. It's called The Characteristics of White Supremacy Culture. There's like 15 of them. And one of them is the idea that there's only one right way and everything else is the wrong way. This is embedded in our culture in the United States and in any country that's been colonialized has this embedded underneath in like programming. Like if we were a computer, this would be like in the programming that makes us operate. So it is something that will challenge people whether they go to church or not. Like this is a great example because it's so concrete, but I want everyone to just know that we live in a society that is colored by the cultural narrative that there's one way and everything else is the wrong way. And so what happens when you add church to it is you put some of these ideas and you make them your worldview since you were a baby. And when you challenge the idea, you're not just challenging this one idea of going to this particular church on this particular day. You're challenging the worldview of the person that's predicated upon believing this. And then they feel completely disrupted. Like you have to be wrong because otherwise their entire thing they've built their whole life on is wrong and they can't entertain that as a notion. They can't. And when I say they can't, I don't mean they don't want to. I don't mean they stopped loving you. I mean, their brain cannot compute what you are saying if they're going to keep their worldview. And the idea of not keeping their worldview is so foreign to them. Like, no, it's like the sky is blue. No matter what you say, they're gonna fight for that sky being blue, even if it was just discovered that it was an optical illusion and the whole time it was purple. They're just gonna go by that. So this is very, very nuanced. What I want the person who's listening, who went through that to know is it doesn't mean they don't love you. It just means they can't walk on that journey with you. And if we look at it with an infinite compassion and infinite love, pretend, and I don't say this in a hierarchical way. It's just the best example I have right now. It's not to diminish the other person in any way, but pretend that you met when you were both in kindergarten and you walked a spiritual journey. And they graduated from high school and they went to all the workshops at church and they live a faithful life and they try to be a good person and they're doing the best that they can with what they have. And then you said, I'm not just going to go to college, but I'm going to go to NASA and I'm going to like ride on a rocket and they're like in high school and they do the things that are appropriate for high school, and high school works, and high school's not bad. It's good, but it's never, ever, ever, ever going to be NASA. And now you're like, oh my God, I just saw a flying comet and I'm going out into space and then I'm going to Mars. And their ability to understand that you have the capacity to go to Mars, it's not lack of regard. They cannot compute that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're in a situation where the person is fundamentally loving and kind and good, and you have other benefits from being in a relationship with them, you can just say, hey, I'm just going to work at NASA and you can stay in high school. Can we do that? Can we just go with that? And then I'm going to see Emily and I'm going to see Maggie and we're going to hang out and have the best time. And then I'm going to come home and we're going to do these things. So there's a spot where both people can agree, maybe, right? Sometimes that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the person who's in high school is like, no, high school is where everybody lives and I'm not moving. And NASA's crazy. That space stuff? No, we're not doing that. So there's a time when it is a rift from the other person. And there's a time when it's like, no, but there's like 5 million people at NASA. And now that I've met the people that live in NASA, I want to be in space every day. And this is just no longer going to work for me. So there's the nuance. There's the how do we stay? There's which person just can't compute the other way the person is. And there's no wrong answer for any of it. And nobody has to be the villain. Like, it doesn't have to be that they're terrible or that you're terrible. It's just we went to different things, we had different experiences, and now we're in a different spot. Okay. Did that make sense?
Yes. And I think, to summarize what you're saying, I think in the context of this situation, and honestly, many other situations, it's like, is that person willing to let you explore and be okay with that? Or is it a much bigger conversation where and this comes back to like the mutual respect thing of like, are they okay with you going down your own path, and are you okay with them staying on that path? And if that and this applies to so many different situations, but if that is a fundamental point of tension where they are viscerally not okay with your exploration of new ideas, ideologies, different paths, different understandings, like that's a different conversation than like, oh, we're just starting to see the world differently, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah. Like, for example, my husband plays video games and I go to workshops. Like, this is how it works, right? And I will never be a gamer. Like, there's just nothing in me. If I had 5 extra hours, I'd be, binging everything Emily ever taught. Like, that's how I would be spending my time. But I think his games are fascinating. I will pop in and I'll ask him, which game are you playing? What is it about? What are you doing? Tell me more. And then there'll be a time when I'm done and then I'll go back to like, Instagram and checking out your latest reel or whatever, right? Like, but there's positive regard. There's respect for like, it's his hobby. It's really fascinating. A lot of the games he does are like very meditative and it's the way he relaxes. And I'm fascinated by that and I have lots of questions about it. So I have positive regard both for him and for his thing, even though I don't do his thing and I will never do his thing. Right?
Yeah.
And same him with me. There was a couple years ago, Oprah did a thing at the big arena in Miami. And I'm like, will you come with me? Just please. Right. And he's like, yeah, I'll come with you. I'll see what it's about. And there was a part that was really interesting and he was super engaged and it was really dynamic. And there was another speaker who came out that he was like, I'm pulling out my phone and please enjoy, but this is not for me.
Yeah.
And so we're able to visit each other's worlds. We don't have to live there. That's kind of the question also. It's like, can we visit each other's world, not have to live there? And could that work? That goes back to what is the best relationship I could have with this person? And then do I want that?
Okay, a follow-up question I have, especially when the growth that we're doing is related to identity work, worldview work, unpacking, unraveling. And I have noticed within myself and many of the women I work with that often when you're in like really in the messy middle of it, you can't always articulate what you're even going through or what you know or what kinds of questions you're asking. And so I have seen it pan out where she enters a conversation with her spouse around this and he's like, I want to know more, like kind of like asking questions like, why are you doing this? Like, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, I don't know. And so, like, how do we approach those conversations when really it's like the core of our identity is evolving and we don't necessarily have the language for it yet? And he's trying to make sense of it, whether for understanding, fear, or whatever. What are some really like tactical language we can bring to that conversation to ultimately ask for that mutual respect, time, space?
Hmm. Okay, so a couple of things. I think you say exactly what you just said. You said it so beautifully. Hey, I'm on this exploration and I'm kind of in the messy middle where I'm not a caterpillar, but I'm also not a butterfly. And I don't really have an answer right now. But as soon as I have one, you're the first person I want to tell everything to. So, hey, can you just come along for the ride while I figure it out? Right. So you could say exactly that. And then you get into like, what is the conversation you want to have and why? If you're asking for time, like let's say I want to go on a retreat. Hey, I'm going to be gone for a week. We need to plan how we're going to do it, what we're going to do. It's going to be an investment of my time, of my energy, of my money. Hey, can you just go with the flow that this means something to me, right? So it's very much like you don't have to have it all figured out, and that person can just be on board with going with the flow or not, right? I understand the desire for concreteness. Like, I get it. And even from the partner who wants to be like, is she going to leave me behind? That's why he wants the
Yes. I
concreteness.
feel like that's like the next topic we need to like close out with is
Yeah.
that is she going to leave me behind? Are they going to outgrow me?
Yeah.
As like a major tension point.
So I think it'll be maybe not what you expect as an answer, but let's riff on it together, which is yes, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
No, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And so here's how I think about my own marriage, and then we'll see where it leads us. I had a mom that was very graspy with me as a child and controlling, and it didn't feel good. It wasn't a good situation. And as a result of that, right, like we become the opposite of what we grew up with often, or we're impacted by it. So as a result of that, when I met my husband and I realized I wanted to spend my life with him, I was like, I never want to be that way. I never want to be what hurt me that I didn't like. I never want to be that way. So I have this mindset that is like, if it was ever for his greatest happiness to not be with me, I would want that for him. And that allows me to have so much detachment about how I love him that I can just relax into loving him. And if it lasts 20 years or 30 years or 40 or ends tomorrow, I can be like, wow, that was amazing. Right? Now, what I'm saying is something as someone who's like a master certified life coach, who's taken a bazillion classes, who thinks about this all the time. I'm saying it from a very, very, very high level of emotional maturity because I've done like thousands of hours of work. Somebody else could hear me say that and be like, I want to be with them forever. This is nonsense. What is this woman, saying? So I want to caveat that with, but what if you could? What if you could look at the person you love and say, wherever your happiness is, that is what I would want for you. And what is in the way of you believing that? That's the kind of stuff we work on in coaching. Is like, oh, what's in the way of me believing that is that I will be okay, that they will be okay, that the kids will be okay, that life would be okay, right? Like, then what's in the way reveals you your path forward of what is the emotional work that you need to do. So how I practice detachment is thinking about my love for the other person. That's what gets me to be able to be in detachment. But let's say that you're in a situation where you're like, Maggie, yes, I resonated 100%. My partner is like Mr. Attached. They do not want to hear any of this. They're like, no, we're going to be together forever. And I'm really worried that we're not. Okay, in that scenario, what I would say is this. You can include them as much or as little in your thought process as you want. You can say, I'm committed to you. I'm committed to you for life. That is true today. You are telling the truth because today it is true. If that ever changes, you will tell them then. That's tomorrow's problem, as my engineering husband would say. So it's like, what is true for you today is like, I'm not going anywhere. This is not happening. So let's cross that bridge. If that bridge ever arose, we can cross it then. That's one thing. The other thing is, this is another thing that I'll use myself as an example. My best friend has been my best friend since 6th grade. I am 52. So whenever we calculate it, it's like over 40 something years. And we've been through everything you could imagine that two best friends could go through in that time. And there have been times we've been closer. There's times we've just, life, career, kids, things, whatever. And I had a moment when I looked at my best friend and I said to myself, I will never outgrow her. And I made a decision and it was very similar to this growth gap. I go to all the workshops. I became a coach. All my friends are now coaches or, people who do this type of work. And then my friend, I call her a civilian. My friend doesn't do any of that.
A normie.
A normie, right? So there was a time when I wanted to have all these deep conversations and she was just like not into that. And I really struggled for a while to find my way forward. And then I was like, what if I just decided that I was never going to outgrow her? Then what would I do? And what I did was I just started talking to her about the stuff that we both love. So we like stuff like Bridgerton or telenovelas. We were both Latin, so we grew up watching novelas. So I'm like, let's just talk about the stuff we both have always loved. And let's connect on those things that we have that overlap. And I'm not going to worry about everything else. It takes a village. I'm going to be with my village of all the people that are going to NASA with me, right? We're in space together. And so I offered to the person who's worried, will I outgrow my partner? You might, but you could also decide that you won't. And if you did, then you could deal with it then, right? Like you have options. It's not all or nothing. You have these different places on your path where you could land. So that's my nuanced answer.
Yeah. Well, and the advice that I have given that we navigated when we had this conversation initially back in, I don't even know, 2020 or so, was like, I don't want to. That is not my intention. But growth is also a core value for me. And it is true that if you are not willing to grow in any capacity, at some point, I can see a reality where we would be in different planets. But that is not my intention. So my invitation to you is, what does growth look like for you? Because I also really believe that you don't have to be growing in the same way, on the same process, in the same, rabbit holes as the person in your relationship with. But if you are a person who deeply values growth, it is going to cause tension at some point if that person is completely unwilling to grow in any capacity. Because if one person is remaining basically the same as they were when they entered the relationship, and the other one is on a completely different trajectory, at some point that's going to feel uncomfortable. And so my encouragement is always to sit in that conversation with the invitation of like, it is my desire for us to grow together for the rest of our lives, because that's what people have the opportunity to do, to evolve. Like, in what ways, like, what could growth look like for you? Like, what are you curious about? And that is obviously going to change. Like, I have grown in 1.5 million different ways since we first had this conversation, right? But there's this like mutual understanding of like, it's not my intention ever on purpose to change so much that this doesn't work. But it is a potential reality that like, if that is not of value to you also, that at some point, like, we're going to be having to have that conversation again. And so, I love that you have brought this up too. You can't make anyone do anything. You can't make anyone go to therapy. You can't make them, but you can invite them. And so much, and Andrew's come on the podcast and talked about this too, but so much of what got him down his own trajectory is just me sharing. Like, here's what I'm learning in therapy. Here's what I'm discovering. Here's what I'm working through. Here's what's so hard. And him just like kind of secondhand absorbing it allowed him to kind of start to process his own stuff and be like, oh, I see how that has played out for me. Or, like I said, he's an insanely curious person. So like, just bearing witness to my evolution without the pressure of like, you need to do this too. Like, I'm starting this like habit challenge, and if you don't do it with me, then I'm not going to do it, right? Like, just bearing witness to like, oh, she's doing all of these new things, she's changing, and like, it's really working, and she's really happy. Like, maybe I want to, explore what that looks like too. Like, I'll never forget, I was sitting upstairs at my dining room table and I get this Marco Polo message from my husband. And he's like, I get it. Where do I begin? And I was like, what are you even talking about? And he was like, this whole growth thing. Like, how do I start? Like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, that's not really how this works. Like, it's a growth journey. You kind of got to figure it out. I mean, I can give you some books that have been helpful, but like, you're not on your own. Like, I'm here with you, but like, the whole point of personal growth is that it's a personal journey, right? And then interestingly enough, like we have been on separate yet aligned paths with the kinds of questions that we're asking and the things that we're exploring. And now when we do get to like go out to dinner without the kids, we get to have these really rich conversations where I get to share, you know, things that I'm reading, and he's sharing this like one person on TikTok who like totally helped him unravel this whole belief system that led to this other thing. And like, it's so funny how we have been on totally separate journeys just because we're in that season of life with young kids where like we can't even freaking finish a conversation, right? And then when we do get to talk, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, we're like actually finding really shared or complementary information. Like, how cool is this that like we're coming back together as these like totally evolved versions of conversations we would have had before? And how cool that the person I'm in a relationship with is changing and getting new information and evolving. And it doesn't mean that I have to agree with it. It doesn't mean I have to be on the same path. It doesn't mean that I have to be curious about the same things, but like how exciting that he gets to change too. And that we have this commitment of evolving together. And I think I would be interested in your perspective of this, but like if you're bringing that invitation to the conversation, to the relationship, multiple times over a period of time, and that person is straight up like, I don't want any part of this, like, that's kind of really telling in itself.
It is, and there's always nuance. So I don't want any part of this, and I support you at 100%. I'm kind, I'm dedicated, I'm devoted. I have fundamental respect for what you're doing. It's just, if you were able to categorize it as a hobby instead of as a core part of your identity, and you're just like, I'm just not into golf, but I love that you're into golf and I'm all for it. That's a very different flavor of, I'm not into this. I can't believe you spend that much time on it. It's a waste of time. What are you doing? Right. So I could see that there are people where you could have a profound amount of personal growth. And it also depends where the partner is starting off at. Because I always say my husband is the most mature Zen person of all of us. Right. And he has done stuff with me, but he's not in it like all the time like I am. And I'm like, he has started at a very high spot. And he could just kind of hang out there because of the way his thought processes work. But somebody else might be with someone where they're into growth at 100%, but the person they were with started behind, negative 100. It's just a very different dynamic. So I always want to leave space for the nuance, but to say, it's okay if you change your mind. It's okay for you to grow. It's okay to outgrow someone. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for that person is to encourage them to find their path if their paths are so different than yours. That is actually very loving. So that's just the little nuance that I would add to that.
I feel like we could talk for 800 years. There is one more note, as I was just combing through your content, and I see this come up not only in marriage, but in any relationship, and how the people around us are mirrors for our inner world and our inner evolution. Would you be willing to riff off on that for a few minutes before we close out?
Absolutely. So the idea of the people around us are mirrors, the way that it pops up for me is if you're scared of something and you bring it to them and you want them to be your confidence, they're often going to mirror back your fear instead of your confidence. So when I was starting my business, I used to work in human resources, and I left human resources and I'm a coach. And so this is the business that I run. And I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of anything you could imagine when you're starting something new. And I would come to my husband and I would really desperately want him to tell me everything was going to be okay. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be okay. It might not be okay. Like, he's an engineer. He's analytical. He's going to just look at like the facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, I need to find my confidence for myself. I can't go look for him to give it to me. I have to find it. And of course, when I was like, everything's going to be fine. I got this. I've totally figured this out. He's like, oh my God, you're doing amazing. Everything's going to be great. Right. He mirrored back to me wherever I was. And sometimes we experience a lot of disappointment when we want that external reassurance. So that's what popped out at me around my own experience with mirroring. But if you have a different flavor of that, feel free to bring it.
No, I just think that that's so powerful. And even I love that you brought up like you're coming in expecting them to make you feel a certain way. But really, when you are unsettled in it, the expectation that someone else is who is not on that journey with you is going to make you feel a certain way is also not fair. And this came up recently with some friends where one of them was giving the advice or reflection in marriage of like, you're expecting him to love all these pieces of you. Do you love them within yourself first? So, yeah, I think one thing that is so interesting, when we're feeling in any relationship, friendship, family, marriage, when we're feeling a certain way about what someone says or what something does, more often that has more to do with the way that we feel about ourselves or the way that we feel about it. And they are just holding up a mirror for our own inner world and our own experience or our groundedness or lack thereof around it.
100%. I don't know where I read this, but it's like if you're unsettled by what somebody tells you, it's because you already believe it at some level. So
Yes.
it's like if somebody told me that my hair was purple, I would just be like, okay, whatever. Like I wouldn't even think about it twice. Like my hair is brown, it's fine. So if somebody told me that I was out of integrity or that I was lazy or something, it's like I know how hard I work. You could call me any kind of name and it would just be like, it would roll off me, right? It just wouldn't be there. But if you tell me something and then I get offended and I'm like, ugh, then I'm like, wait, there's some part of me that is on board with that interpretation. And that's what we want to then investigate what that's about with gentleness, with compassion, with love for yourself and the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about this, I've coached a lot of women with, showing up in the online space. And they're like, well, how do I just care less about what people think? I'm like, well, what do you think? Because if you're afraid that someone is going to criticize, that means you're open to the criticism or already having that inner dialogue within yourself. And the more grounded you are in what you're doing, the more aligned that you feel, the more unshakable you are at what the opinions and projections of what the people around you are. And I think that translates really well to some of these bigger conversations in marriage and relationship. It's, the more you are rooted in your authenticity, your self-love, your self-devotion, your own journey, the less the way your partner feels about it is going to rattle your experience with it.
That reminded me of something that I think is really important. Remember when we talked about the butterfly and the caterpillar? Like you're on this journey and you yourself, you can't be so rooted because you kind of don't fully know yet, but you're rooted in something. You're rooted in the community, you're rooted in what you're learning, you're rooted in your revelations. Tell me what you think about this and if you've seen this happen too. I've worked with a lot of women where they do something that improves how they interact with their partner. Like they do have these revelations and then they actually become better partners. And then the partner might be a little wounded or a little mistrusting. Like, are these changes real? Is this really how you're going to be now? They're kind of really trepidatious and very hesitant to be like, wait, is this our new normal? Or are you going to like turn on me? What's going to happen? And I like to remind people like the idea of a skittish dog. Like if you adopted a dog at the pound and their previous owner was like really mean to them. And then every time that you come to the dog just sort of jumps. And it takes like months and months and months before the dog will just relax in your presence. This happens with our partners. And when we're making big changes in our life, think about that skittish dog. It's going to, over months and months and months, we have to create that it's okay to come to me. It's okay to hug me. It's okay to touch me. The process is like, we can have the revelation in an instant and just be in a new place in our mind. But then the process of living it out in day-to-day life with the people who love us, that's going to take over and over and over and over again, them seeing how we have evolved. And that's okay. Like nothing's wrong with you or them if it takes time for that adaptation.
Yeah. I love that. And again, it's inviting into a journey. Like I think, going back to these layers of conditioning we've absorbed so often, it's like we have to have it all perfectly all figured out before we're willing to share or to, have the conversation or to speak on it. And it's like life is a forever journey. Like there is no making it. There is no, end point until the end point. And so, the invitation and the journey and the gradual evolution over time can be one of the most beautiful parts.
And I think life is messy. Like, think about childbirth and orgasms. Two amazing things that we do as humans, and they are very messy experiences. But we have this cultural narrative that is like, it has to be hospital corners. And if it's not hospital corners, then something's wrong. And it's like, if you just accept, like, if everything we've talked about is like, you are messy, your partner is messy, and your life is messy. And if we start from that hypothesis, everything else we talked about just gets easier.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to have it magically all figured out. We're all figuring it out all the time. Beautiful. Okay. Well, Maggie, if someone is listening to this and is like, I need to get more connected to the work that she's doing, I want to watch this workshop, how can we get connected to your world? Tell us more about, where to find you and what you have going on these days.
Totally. So my website is maggiereyes.com. So you can come and find me. We'll see everything there. On Instagram, I'm at the Maggie Reyes. I always joke around that Reyes is like Smith for Latin people, but I am the Maggie Reyes. So you can find me there. If you want to share a takeaway from what you heard today, I'd love to hear it. Feel free to message me. I love hearing from everybody. And I host a podcast as well. So if you love listening to podcasts, it's called the Marriage Life Coach Podcast. And I talk about all the different aspects of all these things just from the lens of wanting to have a thriving, loving relationship.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like we could actually talk for 10 hours because I just have even more questions. So definitely go check that out. Oh gosh, Maggie, I'm so glad you were here. One final question I ask every guest who comes on the show is, what does growth look like for you in this season?
Ooh, in this season, what does growth look like for me? It looks like going to my edges and letting myself be a beginner. So I've been in a lot of situations where I, worked in HR, was an expert, became a coach, took a bazillion trainings, was an expert. And now, like a couple weeks ago, I started a TikTok and I'm a beginner. Right. And I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to be a beginner. And it's like, growth for me right now looks like letting myself be a beginner and trying things and being like, I don't know if I'm going to like TikTok long term, but I'm going to try it for a while and then I'm going to see it and give myself permission to like experiment. I was that A student that needed everything to be like, you do this and then you do that. And then that's how it works. And then it works. And I'm very much in a season of let's experiment. Let's try it. It might not work, but let's see what happens. And that's my growth, 100%.
I love that. Just a student of life. Same. But that also comes with is a representation of a layer of work, going from being like, this has to be perfect. I have to get straight A's. I have to have it all figured out. I have to be the best, to like, it's messy. Let's figure it out. I don't know anything. It's like, oh, what's the Taylor Swift lyric? Like, how do you know everything at 18 and nothing at 22? I'm like, yep, pretty much. The more that I know, the more I realize I don't know. And I am just a student of life and always approaching my comfort zone on purpose.
Okay, is this allowed? I'm going rogue. Everybody, lean in. I'm going rogue. So what is your answer to that question? What does your growth look like in this season? I feel like everybody wants to know.
Oh, well, I talk about it freaking endlessly. So 2024 was a year of like really expansive evolution for me, and also just very messy unraveling. A lot of identity work, a lot of asking really big questions, both within myself and publicly, and what that looked like for this space and for my business. And I came into 2025 being like, okay, I'm ready to alchemize. We're going to do all the things. We're going to put it all together. And then I got pregnant, and I have been so sick in this pregnancy. It has been physically, mentally, and emotionally one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it has also really pushed me inward, even deeper. I thought that I had already been through the depths of hell last year. And it was like I was like climbing out of it and just got like kicked into the canyon. And I have had to really create peace around that. And like, I don't have to be okay. I don't have to pretend like this is fine. Like, I'm in it. And it has been a really deep, intense portal of like spiritual evolution. and like understanding of the depths of the human experience and, the juxtaposition alongside the joy and the good too, right? And so it's been kind of this period of like reflection and pause and introspection while also taking steps towards things that I love and that excite me. And just knowing that I don't have to rush through this. Like it will not last forever. There is another side, which I think is a really powerful lesson for myself and for a lot of women who are just told, put a smile on your face and be positive and be happy. Like I have just always been known as like the, energy can in a bottle, ray of sunshine. And that is still me. And also this year has pushed me to explore the depths of me in a way that makes me feel very human and very in touch in so many ways. So yeah, growth has been a big part of this year and not in the ways that I expected, which also came with a tremendous amount of grief. And really being able to name that and explore that and own that in a way that supersedes anything I've ever allowed myself to experience before, and being able to share and invite that in. Yeah, it's been a year.
That's so profound. Thank you for answering. That was like a little mini masterclass of life, just right there.
Yeah. This year feels like a masterclass of life, just not the one that I asked for. But isn't it always what we need? And so I just feel like I have this really grounded perspective of not having to be in a hurry for the first time in my life. And so, yeah, I mean, I immensely look forward to feeling like myself again, although on the other side of each birth comes a whole nother evolved self. So I'm excited to meet her when she's ready. But just, embracing sitting where I'm at and letting that be beautiful.
Because it is.
Because it is. Because it is. So yes, thank you. Thank you for asking. Okay, friends, I am so grateful, Maggie, for joining us for this conversation and for each listener that is here. I hope that she shared some takeaways that you can bring into your relationship, marriage, friendship, relationship with self and beyond. As Maggie said, if there's anything that sparks something in you, please reach out to her, send me a message. I love absolutely, truly nothing delights me more than hearing what resonates, what is sticking in your journey, what questions you continue to have. That is ultimately how I create everything I do here, is in response to what we're all going through. So thank you. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
Hey friend, I hope this conversation sparked something real in you, something that feels like truth, curiosity, or the courage to keep becoming. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to share it. Take a screenshot, post it to your stories, or send it to one of your friends. You can always find me over on Instagram at Emily Rushel, where I love continuing these conversations and hearing your takeaways. Truly, your DMs are one of my favorite parts of podcasting, so don't be shy. I'd love to reflect and connect with you over there. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by a community of women who ask hard questions, sit in the discomfort of the unknown, blaze new paths forward, and ultimately come home to their wild and waking selves. See you next week.